Friends, it's Jeff. This week's going to be a little different. In celebration of the holiday, I'm going to be elevating a pair of podcasts that were really meaningful to me. Some of you are going to know that I have another podcast called Sacred Frames with the great Sean Palmer, who is an Enneagram writer, and Mike Yager, who's a fantastic man who does church work in Texas, very informed on Enneagram as well. And then you got me, the philosopher, and we talk about themes of spirituality and philosophy and theology in film. And this week we're talking about American history through the lens of film and bringing out the philosophical, spiritual themes. I really enjoyed this conversation and I really enjoy this podcast. And I'm posting this for two reasons. One, I want to elevate some of my other work for those of you who get into it. And so Sacred Frames, the links are in the show notes for YouTube, iTunes, and the rest. But secondly, I'm trying to get my own mind and heart around this upcoming holiday. America really matters to me. And this holiday is going to be a time of great joy, great sorrow, such as the history of America. And as you'll see, that theme is going to emerge in much of this conversation as we walk through what ended up being 12 films that showcase the history of America in our minds. But I'm offering it up to you as something to listen to that I really enjoyed, I was really proud of. And so if you get into it, I appreciate you. If not, skip it. On Thursday, I'm releasing the 7-hour deep dive into Steven Spielberg's Lincoln that I did with TJ, talking about heroic nines. And so just in case you need to mow a lawn or all the lawns in your neighborhood, that will be posting soon as well. So may all good things be yours. Hey friends, Sacred Frames, Jeff Cook, Sean Palmer, and the movie Mike Yager. We're talking about, well, hey, there's a holiday coming up. Woo-hoo! Taking the opportunity to talk about some American movies. Mike, you wanna lead us here?
Yeah, thanks for being with us, everybody. No, for some of y'all, this might be your first time checking in on the feed, and we are so glad to have you here. So Sacred Frames is an evolving conversation about the convergence between the world of film, sometimes television, other media forms, but the convergence of this media with these questions of spirituality in the world. And we've been having a lot of fun doing these over the last year, so we're happy to have you aboard. There's a cool back catalog of stuff you can dig into if you're so inclined. So today, what we're going to do is we have this project, for the 4th of July, what would be something fun. And we thought that maybe we would do our kind of version of a Mount Rushmore. Each of us is going to pick 4 films that to us are indicative of the American story. So they may be titles directly relating to American history, or they may speak more allegorically about the kind of American identities, much as we can even pinpoint that. It's obviously a complex and layered story to get into. But this Mount Rushmore idea came about because we were talking about a America draft. We've done a couple of those, and this is just a little bit of a different take. And the limitations of this, I found kind of the most fun part of the exercise. It's 4 films to tell the story of America on the doorstep of our 250th birthday. Things are going great, guys.
America is crushing. We're the hottest country.
Hottest country, I know. Have you heard?
Hottest. We're the hottest. Yeah, so I want to make sure everybody understands the rules. So this is not a draft. We've all chosen 4. These movies are quintessential to understanding who or what America is. So there's no movie that I know of that tells the whole story of America. That would have to be a 800-part miniseries. And you can take a sliver, an event, or a theme that without that theme, America would be less than what it is, or different place than what it is. Let's not say less than, but a different place. So the way I thought about it was if Disclosure Day's animal disguised alien landed in my front yard.
Spoiler alert for Disclosure Day.
Everyone who's going to see Disclosure Day has seen it at this point. Landed in my front yard and graced me enough to not kidnap my children, as they do in movies, and said, Sean, show me 4 movies to understand this part of the world. That's the way I went into it. So your Mount Rushmore, we will start with the Professor Jeff Cook.
I loved this exercise in the same way. It is the 4 films to tell the story of America, so it's not like the greatest for me. It is, I needed 4 that made sense. If I was just picking one movie to tell the story of America, it would be Rick Burns' fantastic 12-hour documentary, New York. If you have not seen this, it's on PBS. It is an achievement. New York is where everything great and terrible about America begins. New Amsterdam. It begins as an investment. It's not as a space for those who are seeking religious freedom. It's a space where capital, merit come first. And because of this, New York is both highly inclusive, and yet it's one of the earliest and largest centers of slavery in North America. New York was central to George Washington's campaign during the Revolutionary War. It becomes the gateway for immigration. It emerges as the defining city for things like the labor movement and organized crime and progressive politics. And it serves as this major center for the civil rights movement, for queer culture and Stonewall. It is the hub of globalization, which culminates and is exemplified in the World Trade Center and what happens there. For me, the best way for me to tell the story of America ended up being what are 4 New York films that kind of set the stage for the story of everything else. And so one of mine is in 1890s, is set in the 1890s, and the others are all where did we finally get to? And one is 1960s, 2 are 1980s. My first Mount Rushmore is Far and Away. It's a 1992 Ron Howard film. John Williams score, Cruise and Kidman. I'm starting with optimism and hope. Unfortunately, white people grabbing native assets, immigration, class, land as identity. It's a story of a man wanting to prove himself in order to win the heart of a woman. And a primary idea, in my view, here is that America, the idea, is about holding out the hope of reinvention. Because as we hear in another great movie about America, here we judge you by what you do, not by who your father was. And some of the themes in this of immigration and working your ass off and going for it and proving yourself just deeply connect to me. Part of this is that my dad's side of the family are all Okies. They're poor folks. My grandmother was the youngest of 10 whose parents died when she was 2. Post-World War, she and her husband bought a very small house. It sold 5 years ago for less than $100,000, which tells you about where my dad was living growing up. But his brother went to Harvard, and my dad went to Emory and got a DDS. Monster achievement of overcoming poverty. And so this is just this is just something I love. Lots of great images of New York immigration, pushing into those spaces of having to find your identity as an American and then releasing into westward expansion. I feel like I'm going way too far here, but just love the hell out of the beats of this movie. Anything we're saying about Far and Away?
It's been forever since I've seen that movie, maybe since the year after it came out. I do remember at the time, like, not liking it, but because at the time I was just so burned out on Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman.
Days of Thunder isn't rewatchable for you?
Like I was just so tired of their whole vibe. So I will take your word in terms of its greatness and American meaning.
And I've got to admit, I was 8 years old in 1992. I have never seen Far and Away. I mean, the immigrant story, obviously critical to the American story. West Side Story is one that was on my long list and has that sense of a New York in transition, and the Jets and Sharks being these warring entities, not so much with each other, but with the system that is very much pitting themselves against one another through the gentrification and this world that is changing around them anyway, that is being stripped away, and part of that is the cause of the westward expansion and just folks looking for any kind of place to live and be and to have the cultural melting pot that we have promised from our outset.
Well worth returning to. It's got some fantastic beats, and I think it holds up. My second movie is in deference to Mike, who may have allowed me to take this as one of my four is Do the Right Thing. Again, jumping forward to 1980s, the story of America is inseparable from the story of race. It's the primary topic in the Constitution. We fought civil war over it. Our political parties literally flipped in the 60s over legislation guaranteeing rights. And there's no better place to see race in America, in my view, actually working and yet at odds than the stories of New York. Lee's film is a massive achievement. It shows race in everyday life wonderfully, themes of power in regard to law enforcement and economics, the symbols of race, from the Wall of Fame to the boombox to the pizza to the Larry Bird jersey to the white tennis shoes. Spike Lee's film is stellar in showing both segregation in a small space and yet deeply integrated culture. My favorite quote about this was from Lee, who was reflecting on the moment and what happened. And he said, when he sat down with journalists, they would always ask him, why did Mookie throw the trash can through the window at the end? And he said, none of the journalists asked why Radio Raheem was choked to death. That is the biggest takeaway for me in terms of like, where has race progressed through our history and where are we kind of at? And of course that theme felt like a lot of us didn't understand what was going on in 1980, and now we do in a different kind of way, because it hasn't gotten better, it's gotten worse. And just a prophetic movie for me.
Anyone who says Do the Right Thing is not a masterpiece, and like what you just brought up, I remember having that conversation about Mookie throwing the garbage can through the window in 1991 in honors English class at Stone Mountain High School. And the reason it comes, and it's such a white kid who was the son of the principal asked very earnestly, was that doing the right thing? And it just surfaces all of these questions and forces us to deal like forthrightly with race in America at that time, probably in a better way than any other film does that doesn't come at you directly. There are lots of movies where you're dealing with race like on its face, and you're dealing with it in a certain way and Do the Right Thing, but it's more of a slant telling, and I think that's why the question still persists.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got it is such a layered piece where, I mean, inequality and policing and ethnicity and pride, they're like, it is a film that embodies this combustible soup, that we've made. Like we live like on top of a powder keg of our own making, and on this particularly hot day in New York, like tempers are going to rage. And it's more about like this, we are the explosive, and like whatever the crisis of the day is, like that's the match that lights the fuse. And are we going to diffuse in time, or are we going to enter into these places of conflict? It's the story we keep reliving.
Yeah. Third movie for me is Wall Street, Oliver Stone film. Love stories of American finance. Big Short, Too Big Fail, Margin Call.
Is Too Big to Fail on your list? Is that what we're going to hear next?
Wall Street is where I'm going.
Well, I just know like you and I have a particular affinity for Too Big to Fail.
It's so good.
And like we both think like this is one of the best movies that has been made in the last 50 years, but it was because it's an HBO movie. Like hardly anybody knows what it is, but it is like I can watch Too Big to Fail and and like watch it again.
Absolutely.
Like just immediately.
All of those financial crisis movies are just stellar. Wall Street elevates and outlines what America became. I think I've stole this from you, Sean, that America is not necessarily a country with a national identity. Like we're an economy. And I might be misquoting you there, but it's stuck with me. Gecko at one point says the richest 1% of the country owns half our country's wealth. 1/3 of that comes from hard work. 2/3 comes from inheritance, interest on interest, accumulation to widows and idiot sons. And what I do, stock and real estate speculation. I create nothing, I own. And that's a perfect encapsulation of the 1%, which owns vastly more than the bottom 99%. Gecko, for me, is a top villain. Conveys the mindset of those who do the most damage in our culture over the past 50 years. But this is the fruit of what we have been building for the last 80 years. It shows that I think it shows that capitalism isn't terrible. I think it's morally neutral, but there's players, there's builders, and there's raiders, and there's labor, and there's management, and we exist in this complex way throughout American history. And at the end of the day, what the movie shows is that all of this needs to be governed by law. And that's what we desperately need right now. It also shows something that we're learning more and more, that the most valuable commodity that's out there is information, and that's just going to get supercharged. The idea from Gecko at the end is, it's like the high point of the movie, and the idea that greed is good ends up being something that we need to wrestle with in fresh ways, because it has such damage. And the solution in Wall Street of loyalty to one's past, loyalty to living a honest, character-filled, moderate life seems to me to be all over this film, and just an elevation of responsibility. Love the hell out of Wall Street, and it's a underrated film in my view.
It's funny that you use the word moderate, because I mean, we are very much a nation of immoderation, right? Like, it's Wall Street is a film like another, that's on my short list, The Wolf of Wall Street, Scorsese's film. Like, these are films that are explicitly about the intoxication, particularly of money. And we live in, obviously a nation in which wealth, certainly in present state, is often mistaken for virtue, as though it is evidence of some great success, and we're finding out more and more as we see how the powerful enrich themselves at the expense of the vulnerable. It's a part of our story that we have to face. We cannot deny. Like, this is who we are, and we're not coming at this from in a taking down our country. Like, I think we're wrestling with the nuance.
Well, you talk about Gecko's speech, but there's a mirror of that speech in Martin Sheen's conversation with Charlie Sheen at the end, which is one of the harshest conversations that you can have father to son.
In the elevator?
I mean, when they're driving to the courthouse at the end.
Yep.
And like, as a pastor, if I'd heard about this conversation, I'd have been like, that's a terrible thing to say to your child, right? At any age. And he basically says, like, well, maybe now you'll try to build something, to do something. Like Charlie Sheen, who has been the head of this union and works with his hands, working for this airline for all of these years. And he basically says it's an unblessing.
Yeah.
It's an unblessing. Like, he says, everything that you have done with your life just saps people, takes from people, and maybe now that you're going to jail.
Yep.
That you're going
maybe
to jail.
Learn something.
Maybe you'll learn something.
Yeah,
like, it's a horrible conversation. But I think you have to have that conversation pressed up against Gecko's conversation with Charlie Sheen, because Sheen's character sees Gecko as a father. He is the father he actually wanted.
Yep.
Versus the father he actually has. And they have clearly divergent views of what makes America great. And Michael Douglas's Gecko is like money. And this is what we see every day. Doesn't matter how you get it, who you hurt, the end game is to have more money versus do something with your hands for people that both builds up people and builds up the world, both physically and emotionally. And so those two conversations have to be in the movie. And what would be interesting if Charlie Sheen just wasn't a complete wreck because of what his addictions have done to him. It's like when he gets out of, who is he when he gets out of prison?
The problem continues, like in terms of like the temptation of easy money, gambling, the sorts of things that we're seeing in terms of major swings in the economy from those in high office who have information and can trade on information, truly disturbing right now, because there is an opposite side to that coin. People who are taking money on one front means others are losing money on the other. It's ugly. And again, law, only when you have the rule of law can an economy actually thrive. And we are testing some of that right now in very ugly ways. Last film for me is The Right Stuff. My fifth movie
was on my list. It was on my list.
Oh, was it? Come on. Well, we can both talk about it. I would have put fifth a movie like The Help or something that elevates American femininity. I just love the hell out of this movie and had to go this way. But the images of masculinity, odds overcome, the pursuit of American greatness. That's where I wanted to land because I'm such an optimist on some of these fronts. Right Stuff may not feel like a New York film, but it ends with the greatest smash cut in film history for me. It's John Glenn in peril, ship entering, the heat. Will the heat shield survive? And him humming the battle hymn of the Republic as his ship becomes a toaster, and he's descending to the earth, and you don't know what's going to happen. And smash cut, it's a full military band playing as he's going down, Broadway, and celebrated with this ticker tape parade. And there's something about that. It's like there's something about all of the culture building towards these achievements that are unparalleled. It's the pushing the limits, but not for self-gain. It's pushing the limits for the rest of us. Like, we're part of this story, and some people are the ones who get sent into space, but it's these massive collective enterprises. NASA, I think, is beautiful on these fronts of like the greatest minds in the world trying to do something profound. And it may be a waste of money on one level, but on another level, I find these things worth celebrating. That juxtaposed with the images of Chuck Yager, who is at the first scene is a knight on a horse, and he's looking at this plane bellowing fire, and it is the dragon to overcome. It's the knight is going to tame the dragon there at the outset when he breaks the sound barrier. And one of the great ending lines for me of any film is at the end, and it's again Yager survives this brutal plane crash, and the rescue team is going out, and they see something in the distance, and the young orderly says, "Is that a man?" And the other guy says, "You're goddamn right it is." That's America. That's America. So at least like the sort of thing that my patriotic bones kind of connects with, Okie that I am, grows up in Colorado and just raised by somebody who just worked his ass off. I connect with that as part of my identity. So Right Stuff is my last movie.
I wish, Jeff, that you lived in Houston like Mike and I do.
Right?
Because one of the privileges of living in Houston, Texas, not Texas, but like in Houston, Texas, is that you talked about this collective effort, and I'm a big student. Spent years just learning the missions to send a man to the moon. Mm-hmm. Huge topic in my house. I've read virtually every book on the subject, and you really will walk around Houston and bump into people who were part of the process of sending a man to the moon. And so you talk about like this collective effort. like living here, you come into contact with a friend of ours, of mine and Mike's, who we all used to work together. His husband is an attorney. And she texted me a couple years ago, and she's like, my husband's doing the will for the last man who walked on the moon.
Come on. Come on.
And you're just like, I think she actually said one of the last men because they couldn't give that much, too much information without. And like that's like the Science Center is here, and when you go there, when you go down to the NASA museums and stuff, you realize like how many people it took. It was this collective effort, which does say something about when America's at its best. It's when Americans decide we can or we have to do this together.
Yep.
And when America is at its worst is when it says we don't need those people. Like and this is true of every major achievement in the world. Why did the North win the Civil War? Because they employed black soldiers and the South wouldn't. Why did America win World War II? Because they decided to use Jewish scientists and the Germans wouldn't. Like at every step, the great thing that we have done has been because even if for a limited time, we decided it's going to take everybody and we're going to put all of our racism, misogyny, prejudice, I'm going to talk about this a little bit later. Our women are going to go into the workforce. They're going to work in factories. They're like, we're going to put all of our BS about who other people can and cannot be to the side to get this thing done. So Hidden Figures tells that story too, as part of that story. Like, can you do the job? That's all we need you to do. Mm-hmm. When America's at its best is when we say, oh, this thing that we're doing is so important that we can lay aside all of our nonsense so we can get it done.
Yep. I can't say it any better than Sean just did, and you just did for that matter, Jeff. I am always annoyed, though, at Chuck Yager, played by Sam Shepard, because it's the reason
Is he your uncle?
Well, no, it's the reason that my name has been misspelled my entire life, because he's got an extra E.
Yeah.
But I think that we all probably in our four have made space for one of these selections that talks about the aspirational in the collective. Like that's I think that all of us have that pull toward the hopefulness of what we can be at our best and the right stuff. A movie that I had not actually seen until sometime during the pandemic. That was one of my initial watches, kind of filling in some blind spots, and had just a tremendous time with it. So much fun. Great pick.
And if people want to chase down that rabbit, I would say the Tom Hanks series on HBO, From the Earth to the Moon, is worth a viewing.
Tremendous.
I probably rescreen that about every 2 or 3 years.
All right, who's up next?
Sean is up next.
All right, so now the true Mount Rushmore. This was actually really fun and really hard, and I found it fascinating, Jeff, because both you and I posted on our social media, like for people like, what do you think? And so what you are constrained by with this is like, what do you think America is? Yep. So one of my favorite thinkers is Eddie Glaude. He grew up in Pascagoula, Mississippi. I was in Gaucher. Those two towns are next to each other, and he's got a new book called America, USA. And he tells this great story at the beginning of this racist experience that he had when he was a kid. Like I'm talking like we grew, like we're not 15 miles from each other and we're about the same age. Mm. And like that informing to him who America was. And so when you say, tell the story of America, you can't tell the story of America absent your own context and experience. Yep. And I'm guessing like if someone like Jesse Waters on Fox News were to tell the story of America, it would all be glowing reports, right? If he didn't even believe that, he would have to say it just because his audience wants him to say that thing. And so I tried to be fair, knowing that I am socially located in a particular way with particular experiences, just like Eddie Glaude, who starts his book saying, I don't love America. And like, there's no theological commitment or command that I should, right? So I'm going to start with, I try to go historically. I try to, like, if people, again, back to my Alien, like to understand who we are. And so that was the lens that I was looking at. And I'm going to say, and this is the problem with Mount Rushmore in any category, whether it's basketball players or anything, it should always be 4, and it's 4, but it should be 5. And I'm going to start with...
Don't say that too loud for the next, you'd say 2 years or so.
Yeah, 47 certainly thinks so.
I'm going to start with Steven Spielberg, Lincoln.
I mean, we're releasing a deep dive into Lincoln on the Around the Circle podcast. I'm so excited that this is on your list.
I cannot believe I'm not on that episode. It is one of my favorite movies. Like, it is one of my, it's my top 4 on Letterboxd. And what's crucial about that is the 13th Amendment did not pass because Americans were of such goodwill, that the Union was of such goodwill. It passed through basically like horse trading, arm twisting, job security. It was a political mud fight. Lincoln, who is just fabulously brilliant, says, like, this is the only way that this is going to happen. There's a fabulous book called Broken Constitution that everyone should go read. And it basically makes this argument. It takes all of the arguments against slavery historically and were made at the time. And he says Lincoln knew you could not get to abolition from the Constitution. You try to make a constitutional argument, you could not get there. The only way you could get there is through an argument through the Declaration of Independence. And so Lincoln turns preacher, is the argument of that book. Lincoln becomes a preacher, not a lawyer, to get the 13th Amendment passed. And just this reminder that America's moral compass, which we have forgotten and we've probably learned over the last 10 years, isn't because people are better, have become better. It's grubby machinery. It is conviction. It is strategy. When we see the voting rights being overturned immediately when the Supreme Court makes a decision, as we have over the last 6 months, we know, human beings are not better. We are not better people. And so those who want to move us forward as humanity, like Thaddeus Stevens, played by Tommy Lee Jones, gives this great monologue to Lincoln in the basement during this party when he's like, I don't care what the people think.
Shit on the people.
He's like, the white people's hearts have calcified. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I do what's good for the people, whether they like it or not.
Without caring about any of them.
And like Tommy Lee Jones is so great in that movie. And the counterpoint to that is Lincoln's speech back to him, which is like, yeah, but it takes strategy and working and deliberation and focus. I think that movie is a tour de force.
Agreed.
There's nothing. It is as near perfect of a film that has ever been made. Like, I cannot think of a flaw. So that's number 1 for me, is Lincoln, who, again, is actually on Mount Rushmore.
I have so much to say. Mike, you should say something.
Yeah, No, I think it's a great movie. I'm thinking of there was a quote that I brought up. I was trying to recall the name. French Archbishop Francois Fenelon. I referenced this a couple weeks back. Said that all wars are civil wars because all men are brothers, right? And the first shot of Lincoln is the one that's coming to mind currently, and it's because it's such a hellish image of just this mass of humanity in the mud, together. It's like something out of Game of Thrones, like Battle of the Bastards. Like, it's just all of this conflict up on top of one another and just bodies piled. And this is the context in which we enter this story, the darkest days in our nation and days we seem to be trending back toward. And, it's something that Lincoln played, obviously, in his third deserving Oscar by Daniel Day-Lewis. He's talking about Euclid, like this 2,000-year-old text that reminds us of the self-evident truth that things that are equal to the same thing are equal to one another. And this is the fundamental truth upon which our nation was founded, or at least we claim as such. And it's that haunting urgency that is, pressed throughout the film. And it's the frustration that you see rising up within Lincoln. Like, no, I'm not going to wait now.
Yeah.
I'm such an idealist, but the story of America is about pragmatism, and I think, Sean, you're right. It's horse trading. It's deals being made both in New York and Washington. That is primary to our foundation. Read a fantastic book for like the fifth time. It's Redeemer President by Alan Gulaz. I don't actually know how to pronounce his last name. He goes into how much Lincoln hates Jefferson throughout the book over and over and over again. But when it comes to crunch time, he is quoting Jefferson in his most important speech to enact his most important view and most important accomplishment. And it's exactly as you said. He has to get his preacher on and say, this is a new birth. We are restarting right now based on this war. And what that's showcased in that movie is so valuable for our place and time right now, that if, as you were saying, Mike, we're brothers in fighting one another, and the only way our country moves forward is if we can communicate across lines and come to places where we have conversations that move us forward together practically. And it's really showcased there. It's I love the hell out of this movie. I do think it's underrated, and it's a perfect film for me.
Yep.
All right, number 2.
Number 2 for me, again, back to my Alien. This is my framework. This is my lens. The 2023 Martin Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Ooh, come on.
Because you cannot tell the story of America without telling the story of Native Americans,
Yep.
First Nations people. Mm-hmm. And this is an encapsulation of what happened to those people. When the Osage struck oil, American white men married into those families for the specific task of leveraging those relationships for the wealth. This quiet machinery of dispossession that is at work in this country and continues to be at work in this country. Like you talked about before, the 1% owning like 98%. That is the quiet work of dispossession. This is what we see every day, subtly, that everything now is a subscription. Like, I think that's what the three of us actually own physical media. And I think that's part of our gentle pushback to like, no, I'm not going to be a subscriber to everything. I'm going to own something, it's going to be mine. And it's also a frontier story. It's a story of discovery. It's also the story of the birth of the FBI. There's a lot of interesting about how the Pinkerton Detective Agency ultimately becomes the FBI. Right. Policing of black and brown bodies and the lack of policing of those who cause injury to black and brown bodies are all in that book, and even more so exposed in the movie. I find it fascinating that this movie came about when Scorsese's first treatment of it was to focus on the Jesse Plemons character because he wanted to tell the story of the birth of the FBI. And I think it was actually DiCaprio who said, like, no, this is the Osage story. Like, center on the Osage people and their plight. And any telling of America cannot not tell the story of First Nations. And so that's why for me, has to be on the Mount Rushmore of understanding our country through film. So I don't know your thoughts.
I'm glad you mentioned, Sean, the changes that were made in the production, because there was a very pointed choice to shift the POV of the book to the First Nations character, and specifically Molly Burkhart, played by Lily Gladstone, an amazing,
who should have won the Oscar, by the way. And I will go to my grave mad about that.
We're not going to fight about poor things right now. What really sticks with me, and it's held within the ending, and obviously this is spoiler deep, but there is a flourish in the end of Killers of the Flower Moon in which Scorsese pulls away from the narrative action of the film to this point, and we go to the staging of a radio play and a recounting of these various events that we have just seen unfold, complete with all of the old-timey advertisers, that you would have on these old radio shows. And then Scorsese himself steps on camera as the director and reads the obituary of Molly Burkhart. And I will forever be haunted by the final line of the film, which is Scorsese staring basically direct to camera and reading the end of the obituary. There was no mention of the murders.
Yeah.
that all of these things happened, and yet it is the character of King, Robert De Niro, in truly one of his great performances as just the evil incarnate, but the evil incarnate that speaks to you through a smile and a prayer. And that is certainly a character and an archetype that is more and more familiar to us in our day and age as well, in the ways that religion is wedded to power and money, and that'll, I think, probably continue to play a part as we carry on through the remainder of these picks.
Yeah.
What hits me is just the theme of historic extremes in America. You have Jefferson, again, all men are created equal on one side, and on the other side owned, and I think good reason to believe raped enslaved people. In my town, we live right next to a historic space that's earmarked for the slaughter for the Sand Creek Massacre. You had Civil War veterans coming, having just done battle, many of whom died for the things that we see in Lincoln, come home and slaughter wholesale families. Mm-hmm. And the historic extremes are something you just can't escape when thinking about the history of America. And unless we're honest about the negatives, we do great damage to ourselves presently and to our future. And you brought up the gentleman who works at Fox tilting to one side over and again. This does damage to our hearts if we aren't honest about our past. And so great choice.
And I would like to mention that the monument that you mentioned in your town, I do believe that is the only sliver of Greeley, Colorado that is not owned by Jeff Cook.
If you actually saw my land holdings, you would not be as impressed as being made mention.
Like as a former landlord, when like people have so much more of a glamorous idea of what it's like to own properties than it actually is.
It actually is. That's exactly right.
It's like, so no, this kind of sucks. Like you're just dealing with problems all the time.
Right. Number 3.
All right, number 3 for me. And my family debated this with me. Well, I mean, my wife debated with me. My daughter is on my side. My oldest was on my side. Because I don't think you can understand America without Saving Private Ryan.
Come on.
And here's why. Going back to, you guys will have to help me. I've read the book. I just don't remember who. Was it Hauerwas or Brueggemann that wrote War and the American Difference? Do y'all remember?
Have not.
Mike's gonna pull it.
I'll find it.
I think it's Brueggemann. But the central argument of that book, which now I've read like 15 years ago, so that's why I don't remember which one of those guys wrote it. The central argument of that book is that America does not understand itself. Yeah, Mike, you got it?
Hauerwas. Shout out Texas.
Hauerwas. Yeah, okay. That America cannot understand itself apart from war. It is part of our national liturgy that we have to do it every so often to remember who we are. But the seminal war in American memory is not actually the Revolution. It's World War II. So for those who are listening who are pacifist, the argument always against pacifism is, what about Hitler? And so it is the thing that we remember most because it is America at its most sacrificial for good. And you have to remember that Americans didn't know the Holocaust was happening as it happened. Like, we are reading back in, it's like, well, we went and we saved all these Jews from the Holocaust, which we did. But when soldiers liberated Birkenau and Auschwitz, they didn't know that that was happening.
They were shocked.
Like, we knew things were going wrong, and we knew that there was anti-Semitism, and we knew that there was mistreatment and displacement, and that people were being shipped off. But we didn't know about gas chambers. And so one of the things, that's why we always get World War II movies when we feel good about ourselves as a country. We're just like, this is the thing that we did. But it is the pinnacle of American sacrifice for the one. It is the lost sheep parable told in movie form, that this woman, echoing back to Lincoln, has lost sons. There's one remaining. And for her sake, we will sacrifice all of these others. Ed Burns' character makes the argument in that film as they are walking through the fields, like, is it worth it to save this one person to put us all potentially in danger? And the reality is it's not. But this is how America sees itself. And and World War II gives us permission to see ourselves as the hero and to see war as salvific. And this is the problem that we have faced ever since World War II. We think we can solve problems through warfare, and that the solving of those problems through warfare can be righteous. And it plays in the back of it. So Memorial Day, Veterans Day, 4th of July, when people like the three of us make movie lists for people to watch for the holiday, there's always a World War II movie. It is our war. There is not always a Civil War movie because it brings our moral compass into conflict. And we have to deal with what war is. And we don't tell the story of truly of the American Revolution. George Washington becomes the greatest general. Why does he come to the American side? Literally, like, this is a historical fact. He thought the British weren't paying him enough. Like, the British paid British officers who were born in London more than those who were born in America, and it pissed him off. And then how did he win battles? Basically by starting them and running away.
Yeah,
like
retreating.
the whole process, his whole strategy was King George is fighting wars all around the world. We are going to make this too expensive for him to keep doing. That was the strategy. So we don't tell that story. But to see ourselves as the hero, we tell the story over and over and over again of World War II. And so you can't understand America without, and it's almost Armageddon-like. Like there's this moment in the movie Armageddon when they're about to launch these two space shuttles side by side, which is scientifically ridiculous. But it would, like, the first one would melt the second one, right? Like the blast, like the heat shield would be totally torn. But anyway, they're walking out of the hangar, going to the pad. Flags are flying in the background. Like what Michael Bay is doing in Armageddon for those 30 seconds is what Saving Private Ryan does for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And you do appreciate the genuine sacrifice that these men and women made during this war, and that the world would be a very different place had they not. Mm-hmm. And so it is a story of America's best impulses, even if it's not America's consistently best actions.
Yeah, I think that's well put, Sean. I experienced a bit of a unexpected, strange dissonance because I actually revisited this film just recently in the lead up to Disclosure Day, and my wife had not seen it actually ever. So this was our kind of first time watching together, her first time, mine first time in a while. And I had though the filmmaking is as, I mean, stunning and like perfect in its way as it ever was, I had a bit of a resistance to the flag waviness of it. Like the film literally opens and closes with a flag waving. And I think that's maybe just it hitting differently in our current age of the military industrial complex. Like the valorization of it and the sacrifice like are every bit as affecting as they were, and seeing the losses of these characters that we deeply come to care about. I wonder, and I'm going to put this to you guys, and maybe this will roll into what you have to say, Jeff. I had a really hard time with the ending and the indebtedness that comes with a line like "earn this."
I want to talk about that.
I'm going to hand it to you because I think you probably have more to say on it than I do. But it's just like I get what it's going for, and also at what cost becomes a question that it becomes really knotty, especially as the world and our place as an industrial military nation has only become that much more fraught in our involvement sense.
Earn this is the most important line in the film, and we created a blank canvas for you to paint. And I really wish that there was so much promise. We feel it. There's so much promise in the 60s. You see it in the right stuff that I wanted to elevate. There's like, we're going, and there's something about like, what have we actually built on this foundation? The world wasn't taken over by the fascists in that season, and we created space for a middle class, which in one scholar's view is the greatest achievement of our culture, is creating a middle class that votes and has rights and is actually, and it creates what seemingly is the foundation for the civil rights movement, in that black men, Native Americans fought and died. And Truman is absolutely banging that drum. They fought for us and deserve to have a voice. Obviously, LBJ's work essential in making that happen. And can we hold it? It's a republic. If you can keep it, is always there, and earn it. Ends up being, here's our foundation, and it's a troubling moment for a lot of us right now. I knew men. My grandfather, who fought in that war, he was a photo reconnaissance pilot. I have a letter that he wrote back to his bride saying, "Today we liberated France, and I buzzed the Eiffel Tower." And
wow,
like, I'm filled with joy at one level. and because of ideology winning in that moment and knowing the sacrifices. When I go to Arlington, I had a mystical experience going to Arlington where I'm surrounded by these graves and just reminded that human beings are everlasting souls, and the people who are in those spaces, there's something meritorious there for me in terms of encouraging the forward motion. And there is and I'm just an extremist. You hear it all over my language. And there's such lack sometimes when you look at where we're at. And so for me, earn this is somewhere in that space. Yeah. Like you are entering a new world. Don't screw it up. Yeah. But as Sean said, man, this is quintessential American film because it's you can't tell the story of America without it now.
Yeah. It's both reality and myth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what
truth.
That's why I feel like and America is this strange mixture of reality and myth. Yeah, like if you go to Germany, they don't have monuments to Nazis, right? But if you tour the South, they have monuments to the Confederacy.
Yeah.
And that's because we are in love with both reality and myth.
Yep.
And so we want to keep the myth of in lots of different ways. And I think Spielberg in Saving Private Ryan is trying to hold up the notion of genuine heroes, right? You've got Tom Hanks is a school teacher,
Yep.
And like he's trying, and Spielberg is just so earnest as a storyteller, which we discover like more on display in late life as we all get teary in late life, right? Let me just preview for you guys what's coming. Jeff just turned 50. Like you get teary at everything. You just get more earnest. And I think this was actually the beginning of his turn he moves from wonder to earnestness, and he's trying to say something really genuine. And I think it succeeds in a lot of ways, but it's also, this is the story that America tells about itself.
Yep. No, I think you helped me get there, both of you guys. It's both and. It's all three of us know many who do or have served. Have people in our families who do or have served, and there's nothing but respect for that service and sacrifice, and also at the same time, a deep lament for the senselessness of the kind of conflict and preventable death that we send our young people into for the sake of motives that at best are complicated and conflicted. Okay, and I thought I was the Spielberg obsessive, Sean. You got two on your list.
I got two of them.
You got one more.
Yeah, I do have two of them. I have one more. And I'm going to this is really tough because there are so many great choices, but I think I'm going to go with Malcolm X.
Okay.
Spike Lee's 1992 film starring Denzel Washington, the movie he should have won Best Actor for.
Yes.
Angela Bassett. It is the full argument of how a people claim their own freedom through the arc of one life. So just the biography of Malcolm X, from hustler and drug dealer to prophet to pilgrim at the end, which is usually reverse. Most people go on their pilgrimage before they become a prophet, but he has two. It's a two conversion story, his conversion to Islam and then his conversion to a different kind of Islam.
It's a good line.
He keeps revising his answer. And I think that's really beautiful about America, is that built into our system is the, wait, hold on a minute, maybe I was wrong, we can do better. He goes from wandering young man to incredible certainty to what we were talking about a second ago, wonder and openness. And he's actually killed for the openness, right?
Yep.
And killed by the people who want certainty. In that way, it's a really fascinating religious parable.
Yes.
About how religion works at its worst, and especially for those who become the voice of people, and his disillusionment with powerful religious figures whom he has adopted as father figures, who turn out to be human and sometimes like predatory humans at that. So when he realizes that Elijah Muhammad has been sleeping with young women in the Nation of Islam, but you can't deal with America without talking about the civil rights movement, because what you're getting is Civil War 2.0.
Yep.
War by another means, and how America figures that out. There are some things that I wish Selma and Malcolm X could have been one movie. Right. And those are really fascinating films to put in conversation together. But it's also about the rise to power. And what that means, who's threatened by the rise to power and who's attracted to it. It's about how power is used. Like, you do have Elijah Muhammad, an aging Elijah Muhammad, seeing that this young Malcolm X is going to be his voice. And so it's not a film that's strictly about Malcolm X as a human. It is about the way America constructs change, religion, sexuality, and how those interplay together. How America deals with its political and religious problems, which is by first marginalization and then moving steadily toward elimination. Spike Lee, and until highest to lowest, Spike Lee and Denzel Washington just never miss when they are together.
True.
So I don't think you can tell the story of America without a snapshot of that season in America, which we are still litigating. We litigated it with the election of Obama, the backlash to the election of Obama, and which is still ongoing. Just say it like to know your place to certain populations, and who gets to be in charge, and what makes America, to borrow a phrase, great, and who gets to determine that greatness, and who gets excluded from that greatness.
Yep. I don't
So
think
that's
an exaggeration.
those are my four.
at all.
I think it's really smart to pair those together as that kind of dyad, Selma and Malcolm X, Sean. Like the central question, that is in the counterpoint between these two men historically. Like, does nonviolent resistance work? There's always been this question around how close reform and revolution sit next to one another. Like, our country was founded on that very question. It's like 1776. And we say that, we long for a country founded on the identity of Jesus, or, some people claim this, but we tend to get pretty uncomfortable when people start turning over tables, and especially depending on who it is. And here we have, this person who becomes, the face of a movement, and part of, not just with Malcolm X, obviously with MLK as well. And we talked about the FBI and Killers of the Flower Moon, and a government becoming overtly hostile toward its own people becomes then this thread of the late 20th century, to be sure. Spike Lee, double duty on the list here, and with very good reason. I mean, those are two unquestioned masterpieces. Jeff?
Would add to the trilogy Mississippi Burning if we're throwing in another movie for Selma and Malcolm.
I'm
X.
so old. Like, I saw Mississippi Burning in the theater in 7th grade, right? Which none of the rest of you did. That was just me.
So, I revisited it last year. Hard movie and exposing. I love the image here. I think that Malcolm X. This is one of the great performances by an American actor. I think it was my next pick if I didn't do the right thing. The idea of it's not just about power in America and race in America, but it's about religion in America. I think it's spot on. Hadn't thought about it. Deconstruction takes place in that second conversion, and that is a primary for our culture right now. And what hasn't been brought up, it happens in Lincoln, but the idea of assassination in American history is very, very important. As you were saying, marginalization and elimination has become more and more of a theme in the late 20th century, and something we have to wrestle with when heroes are removed. And I love the idea of coming to understand the people who brought you up and seeing their failures and flaws and choosing to turn from that and build something new. That takes a lot of courage, and it feels like that speaks to something about the American character that's willing to go there, to name, I grew up this far and realized, again, being honest with the history and the past and the present truths, and we needed to pivot. I don't know much about other cultures, I suppose, to say whether or not that happens in other countries, but certainly I think that can be America at its best.
All right. Any final words,
Those
Sean?
are my four. Those are my four. I think my alien would have some questions still outstanding, but it would fill in most of the gaps. I have nothing about the founding of the country in my, so I think
I didn't either. Both of us.
Well,
so you can fill those in, Mike.
Great. Well, you're turning to me. Anyway, okay. So what am I going to do?
Mike's
here?
list.
Yes, if you are still hanging with us this far in, God bless you. No, I feel like I need to begin with a bit of a disclaimer. I was referencing the late writer James Baldwin this morning, and I think I agree when he tells us that I love America more than any other country in the world, and precisely for that reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually. Like, that's kind of the premise that I'm entering in with here, and I've taken it like my alien is going to be very, very confused, I think. To your point, Sean. So I have come at it from a more allegorical vantage, and maybe this is, Sean's oldest daughter just preached for our little church in Meadows Place this morning, did a tremendous job. But for that reason, I've been in the early texts of Genesis and the family of Abraham, and I often will come back to Hagar heading out into the desert, and like this, and I think I've said it to you guys, like the central question: where have we come from? Where are we going? And that's kind of the valence that I was approaching this with. And so I'm coming from the beginning. My first selection is about the promise of our nation, that we've been sold this vision. One nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Theoretically, that's the premise. And we've been doing a lot to test that lately. But that all people are created equal, and that ordinary people matter. And one of the films I thought long about was It's a Wonderful Life. It's a perfect movie. It's not the movie I selected, but that's like an evergreen argument that wealth is not the measure of a meaningful life. That community is required to lean into one another in times of crisis, that a functioning society depends upon all these countless unseen acts of decency between people. But the detail I keyed into was George Bailey, this character who never in his life, we're told, leaves the setting of Bedford Falls. And I think that as much as we can be accused, rightly so, perhaps, of myopia, I think that like something indicative of too many of us is that we have a limited geographic scope of our experience in the world as people. And so most of the story of America has been people faithfully living out these very unspectacular lives, often as victims of seemingly like cruel or random circumstance. We might call it fate. And so the film that I selected started actually just from last year. It's streaming on Netflix from director Clint Bentley, Train Dreams, which I was really hoping to get more of a chance to talk about last year, and we never did. So I'm really excited that I get to talk a bit about it now. So it is starring Joel Edgerton as Robert Grainer, who's a logger in the Pacific Northwest or Idaho, close enough. And the opening narrations tells us that he, though living in Idaho, he never saw the Pacific Ocean in his life and never traveled further east than kind of the western border of Montana. And I find it something really moving about this film's like very lyrical, poetic depiction of one such ordinary life of love and work and family and the facing of unspeakable tragedy and grief and resurrection, and just maybe, like at the very end of the film, this fleeting possibility that this ordinary life would have the opportunity to soar above it all for just this one moment. And he takes this plane ride and he sees his life flash before his eyes. And this is the closing narration. When Robert Grainer died in his sleep sometime in November of 1968, his life ended as quietly as it had begun. He had never purchased a firearm or spoken into a telephone. He had no idea who his parents might have been and left no heirs behind him. But on that spring day, as he misplaced all sense of up and down, he felt at last connected to it all. And I wanted to focus on something that really celebrated the ordinariness of our humanity, and I thought that was a film lately that did that really beautifully, and I would love to hear what y'all talk about it. So that's where we start.
Well, I watched Train Dreams mostly on your recommendation and absolutely loved it. And I feel like Joel Edgerton made a deal with the devil that said he would only be in the slowest movies that were ever made, and he has been faithful to keep his promise. But at the same time, this is just deeply moving American story, really, of a guy and a family who are just out there trying to make it, just trying to live their lives. And I find really fascinating, especially because we are this year, if you're listening to this in real time on release, all of these people from other countries who have come to America for the World Cup. And what I keep hearing in their responses on TikTok, Instagram, is this very ordinariness. And I remember, what? Most of us are just trying to live our lives and love our families and just kind of want to be left alone. We really just do want a level playing field. And we know that tragedy happens and heartache comes and there's beauty and there's joy and there's happiness, that everything belongs. And that you can have purpose and meaning and direction in life without having to, every Christian conference I went to in the late 90s and early 2000s, have an impact or make a mark. And most people just really don't want to do that and don't care about that. And your mark and your impact is going to be pretty forgotten anyway. And so I found that Train Dreams was just the prodding, not in a bad way, but in the way that everybody lives, experience of what it is to just be. But it does have overtones. We get experience of a Chinese, what they would have called a Chinaman in the movie very early on. We do see inequity in the system, like that's revealed. We do know what it looks like to not have the William H. Macy character, not a safety net as we get older. And so it shows in some ways America coming to terms with what it is to be a great nation and versus private and parochial in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's a great film that most people who watch it, I would just encourage, like, just stick with it.
Yep.
I don't know, Jeff, what do you think?
A handful of things. Second movie to reference John Glenn's Flight into Space. Just want
Yes.
to point that out, as apparently this is an American moment. I love the idea. My wife's a historian. I love the idea that American history, all history, is really about the people. So often it's been taught in our culture along the wars, like it's this war, this war, this war, this war, and this is what advances us. And so often that you're missing the real depth of humanity by doing that. It's a very American way of coming to our history sometimes. But as was said, the ordinariness here, the tragedy here, the life is about the people you love that's here, and that 99% of the lives that are lived in our country and our history probably look like this guy or something real similar to this guy, that there's moments, beats that are extreme for a second, and then it becomes ordinary again, and we're talking about cats or dogs, or I forgot what that conversation was early on. And it's beautifully shot. The whole movie is just a little piece of art, gorgeous of the Northwest.
Like what Kerry Condon says to him at some point along the line, the world needs a hermit in the woods as much as a preacher in the pulpit. Like your ordinary life, listener, matters deeply to God and the collective of our shared humanity. So may that be so. Moving on. So we actually talked about this, and I'm glad that everything's just setting up beautifully, gentlemen. You guys did a great job. Because my next selection was really about myth making, like the idea of refraction and revisionist history, like the stories that we choose to tell and how we choose to tell them is always way more revelatory of who we are than we realize. And one thing the stories we tell reveal is what we repress. Like the stories that we don't tell, we don't reckon with, we don't acknowledge, reveal so much of like the original sin that we tend to avoid. And slavery certainly would qualify in that regard. Or we intentionally misremember. So like for generations, cinema depicted slavery from the perspective of white protagonists. Think back to Birth of a Nation, Gone with the Wind, or have along the way softened or denied entirely the true barbarity of slavery. And so I selected a film which I didn't expect at first. It's not my favorite necessarily. It's one that I liked quite a bit more on revisit. But from 2012, I selected Django Unchained, Quentin Tarantino. And so here you have Django, who is a recently freed slave, becoming an instrument not only of liberation, but becoming a blunt instrument of revenge fantasy. And it's also riffing on the Western frontier. That's an important element of our history. I wanted to select a Western. And so this is kind of like pulling double duty in that regard. And what I find fascinating, and it kind of joins two other films in Tarantino's oeuvre in this regard as well, Inglourious Bastards and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, this catharsis that was previously denied. Mm-hmm. And there's this idea that our history of brutality toward one another continues to churn in the background, and it's become like the atmosphere that most of us spend our lives marinating in, whether we like it or not. And in Django, you have these promises of abolition having been unmet or unkept and now threatened anew with so much that the current administration is up to in terms of active disenfranchisement. And so you have a film here that is rooted from that place of a lament turned into righteous anger outward. And I think that there's that fire has to be dealt with. Like, I think that we need that outlet because it's what we are denying ourselves to feel and I think that's where a lot of our inescapable conflict with one another is coming from, is we've never actually dealt with the thing in a meaningful and sustained kind of way. And so there's a lot of questions that remain unanswered, but that's a lot of why I feel like this is a really meaningful selection, because these are questions that remain unresolved.
Well, it's certainly, like, I guess, weaponized the spaghetti Western against its own myth, right? And it does, I think you're right, like, put the brutality on screen, but then, like, it handed a freed man a gun and let him answer that violence with judgment. Right. Which is, if you go back and listen and, like, read things like The Half Has Never Been Told, like these great books about what slavery was really like, what really bothered and concerned slave owners was not what they got. They were never worried about a civil war, but it was a slave uprising. And this is that story in miniature, right? And, like, in America today, what you still have, which we call, like, there's a great book came out about maybe 10 years ago called The Policing of the Black Man. What you still have in America now is the great fear of two things, right? The sexual prowess of black men, and an uprising of black and brown people against white people. And this is precisely why strategically King goes the route that he goes of nonviolence, because he knows their biggest fear is armed black people. And that will get more black people killed than nonviolence. Like, to go into a fight without weapons was actually safer than to go into the fight with weapons. And I think, like, Django, I think you're right, shines a light on all that. I do think some of the folks who said, like, the movie's exploitative, I think they have an argument.
Absolutely.
And it's, I think the argument had always been, like, is it exploitative or is it a reckoning? And your social location, anyone's social location, any viewer's social location might give some instruction to how they view that. But it's a great pick. My alien would appreciate it.
Do you have any thoughts there?
I have tons of thoughts, and probably will leave some of them aside. I heard somebody say recently something to the effect of slavery is a white story. Overcoming slavery, that's a black story. And I resonate strongly with that. And as you're bringing up King, the thing I want to say about King is that I think that nonviolence is the most efficacious and humanizing, as opposed to it being just pragmatic. But how are we going to overcome this terrible condition, that story that we've started with? But of all things, you can hear it in my language, the movie raises more questions for me than it actually answers.
And in dialogue with y'all's selections as well, like, I think fits in with the messiness of that ongoing, evolving conversation in, like, who tells whose stories. And, we have Spike Lee represented. Yep. We have, another vantage point here with Tarantino. I mean, I love you bringing up the point of Steven. I don't have much more to say there. Currently, there's so much to be said, but race is not a monolith, but it is also a critical category of awareness, and no story of America is complete without it. So that was my next selection there. Any other words before I move on? Okay, selection 3. So if that's where we've come from, my next selection is really dealing with kind of the present day, where we are now. And, this era that is typified by ambition and individualism in so many ways. I thought about The Wolf of Wall Street, The Social Network, There Will Be Blood, all categorically fit that category. But I'm going 50 years ago to talk about a movie that is of this moment. Sean and I have both revisited it very recently, and I'm glad he didn't select it, because I think it fits just perfectly into this dialogue here. It is Sidney Lumet's Network, 1976. So often called prescient for, a great many reasons. I'm really taken with the way that it diagnoses these underlying incentives. Like when people call it prophetic, they tend to point to Howard Beale, one of these main characters, shouting, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore."
Not going to take it anymore.
But I would argue maybe that one of the truly prophetic characters in the film is actually Diana Christensen, played by Faye Dunaway. And so she's this person who is ambivalent completely about the truth. Like, she values attention more greatly. And that's a subtle but a really important distinction, because once attention becomes the scarce resource, like everything else, news and politics and religion and morality and even like personal relationship, they all get reformatted into pawns in what we live in today as an entertainment economy. And so the medium itself of television in this case, and she's, taking over this news network that has been hit by these flagging ratings, and she's trying to upend the apple cart and remake this network in her image. But she knows that the medium doesn't merely transmit the culture, like it selects which kind of culture survive.
Yes.
And who has their fingers on the dials of what gets to be narrativized as truth. And so you've got Howard Beale is a respected newscaster. He's being forced into retirement. But then he becomes mysteriously affected by this unseen power, or maybe he just has no more F's to give. And he begins nightly on air, just going on these lengthy screeds and denouncing idolatry and calling people to an active repentance. But the system is so adaptable that it turns his prophecy into content. Like, his sincerity just becomes another programming format. And like, that's the bleak insight of this movie, isn't that the powerful institutions silence dissent. It's that they monetize it. It's that rage and lament are real, but you know what else is real? The ratings are real. And the networks are complicit in the continuation and the platforming of the current administration of a corruption beyond the pale, because the outrage makes for good ratings.
Yes.
And in the end, nobody has to refute Howard because they've transformed him into a product. Like, and tell me that that's not a contemporary sight. And so we have this syncretism of religion and state and media and politics having become spectacle, and news having become theater, and advertising borrowing like a kind of moral language that it doesn't even really believe. And religion, not to lose a step, we've talked about this, adopts branding strategies to keep up. And like, activism becomes performance as much as persuasion. Like, we are living in this day and age where like everything is spectacle and everything is the hook.
Yep.
And like, we have all of these forces converging upon us at all times. And man, like, if you haven't watched Network in a while, this is a movie made in 1976 that feels like it was, truly, it feels like it was made yesterday. It is a terrifying, and also hilarious and sobering, heartbreaking film that I could say so much more about, but like we're up against 2 hours and I got one more pick to go. So Sean.
So that movie is 50 years old. And if it were to release next week, everybody would roll their eyes and say it's a little on the nose. Like, that's how prescient it is. Like, I was like, oh, like this is actually what's happening. And so a couple of things in terms of American storytelling is that you can't have America as we understand it without a free press. But what network is doing is saying, is that free press really free when it becomes monetized? So there's a great story I heard years and years ago about Mike Wallace, who was at 60 Minutes for a long time. And it was the month that 60 Minutes, which may have been 40 years ago, right? The first time that 60 Minutes made money. Like that they had enough rating to make money. And his reaction was, oh no.
Right.
Because as soon as they realized that news could make money, it would cease to be news. Like that would then color their coverage because now they have an entity that makes money. And for all of time in America, the assumption was the news is a public good, that we are not, that is a loss leader. Like we are willing to lose money on the news because it is a good. Yes. And what we have seen and what Network predicted was once the attention economy takes hold, which is where we are now. I mean, Trump, for instance, whenever he wants to push back on CNN or MSNBC or New York Times, anyone who's not giving him the coverage that he wants, his first insult is about readership or ratings. Right? And so that's how you know now we are full on into an attention economy, because what makes you valuable is how much attention you can garner. And I sat watching it. Mike lent me his disc, his Blu-ray of that. I watched it, so I just bought it this weekend myself because I liked it so much. And like it was, if you made this movie today, people would say that it's too obvious and on the news because it's so predicted 50 years ago, the year of Jeff's birth. That's true. That what we are experiencing would happen.
Yep. The commodification of truth leads to mob rule. Plato showed us centuries ago that mob rule is not the way to go. Truth matters. I think you guys are on point. There's one commentator who I heard said that advertisers forever thought that lust was the most powerful of the emotions, and that you, as an advertiser, you appeal to people's lust and you'll get them to buy products, and that we've learned in the last 10 or so years that they were wrong. Rage is where the money stacks are, and Network is pointing to that over and again. I love that you're bringing up spectacle. And again, it's a spectacle over substance. When you appeal to emotional outbursts and to just our id, that's just a recipe for disaster. And Sean, I think you're spot on. News as facts has become news networks based almost entirely on opinion. Opinion is emotional and it targets people's id, and it's why we have an id president. That is what we're functioning under. We've given power at so many different layers to that element of ourselves. It seems to me a network was on my short list, and I think it's a perfect choice for these reasons. This has been a very modern phenomenon, even a postmodern phenomenon of where we've landed as a society, and we really need to do business with it or we're going to get real hurt.
Right. Number 4,
okay.
You're bringing in the plane, Mike.
So, I mean, I think we've got this question hanging over things, and it's, I think all of us are asking some version of the...
Are you going to choose Barry Lyndon?
No.
Are you going to go like the most boilerplate cinephile?
Oh, no, just you wait. We're all asking the same, question. Are we going to turn around this like Titanic before it's too late? Like, can this be saved, right? And I wanted to select something that I felt was did not push away the reality of the obstacles facing us, but also had at the end of the day a hopeful orientation to the world and our place in it, even though it may take broad scale destruction first. Because my selection from 2008, y'all are gonna hate this. The second time director Andrew Stanton has been brought up because I selected Pixar's Wall-E, which I had discussed in the okay, Sean, this is my turn. Which I know I discussed in our recent sci-fi movie draft. I'm going to discuss it from a different perspective here because, and you're going to be quiet because you haven't seen it. But the rest of these fine people have. So Wall-E, one of the great films of the 2010s, it comes in this run of Pixar movies, Up and Ratatouille, and Wall-E right before Disney purchased them from Apple, right, and absorbed the company. And it's pretty telling that the first films they made afterward were Toy Story 3, Monsters University, like they went back into the franchise well. But you have these three films that are some of the weirder movies that Pixar ever made. And at this critical point, before they became part of this other entity, and you have this tension of art and commerce like within the text of the film itself. And so in the world of Wall-E, B&L, by and large, it's this multinational conglomerate, a Walmart or a Costco kind of thing. This one corporate entity seems to have become the controlling interest of all life on Earth, or at least what used to be life on Earth, because now what's left of humanity that we know of has been floating on this grand starship, the Axiom, for over 700 years, following what was supposed to be a 5-year cleanup project. And now the only remaining sentient life on Earth, give or take a cockroach, is a lonely robot garbage man named Wall-E, cursed to clean up our mess. And he couldn't be more zen or thrilled, actually, about his lot in life. And we ultimately end up on the Axiom itself, and we don't need to get into that, where what remains of humanity is spending their every day and night floating around in these hover chairs around the deck that looks kind of like a cruise ship. These big chubby babies sedated by our screens, whose bones have atrophied in the vacuum of space over these great many centuries. And it is commenting on like our care of creation, our day of anti-intellectualism and apathy, and what we've done to our own planet and our own land, and as though it's someone else's job to clean up. But I am taken by the closing image of the film, which it ends up with the seed of new life being found and taken to the passage on the ship that gets them back to Earth, where life may begin anew. And then the camera pans out to show our little blue dot in space surrounded by our like atmosphere of garbage. But pointedly, of all the continents that it could feature, it is North America, the United States, kind of front and center. It is a very much a cautionary tale, and it is pointing a finger in essence at us for being, the primary factor for this being the case. One could make the case. And if we are, where are we going? To go back to Hagar is the question. And if we are to make a turn, I thought about Civil War, film from a couple years ago, as one possibility, and we've talked about it in the other selections. Like, if there is to be something different than the unfortunate reality we find ourselves in, it is going to take all of us, and it is going to mean starting from scratch in ways that we are unaccustomed or, in many ways unwilling, to get down in the ground and to do some planting and cultivating, and to do that in a long and sustained process together, because I think that we all have an aching sense that what is happening is unsustainable. And that is the question before us all. 250 years in, greatest, country on the planet, you can make the argument. And we couldn't be more grateful to call this place home. And at the same time, this is not our home, nor the place to which we declare our primary allegiance in the cosmos. And so, with all of those are my kind of four here. I'll hand it to you guys. I know that Sean may have some really winning takes on Wall-E. What do you guys say?
I literally have nothing to say about Wall-E.
I'll take up all the commentary room. One of my favorite essays by one of my favorite authors is C.S. Lewis, who wrote The Abolition of Man, and in it talks about the conditioners, the advertisers who appeal to something in us that overtakes us. That there's a line that's essentially man's conquest of nature really becomes nature's conquest of man, because we give away our volition. And there's something about where we've arrived. I don't know, in the whole history of our planet, have we arrived at anywhere where culture is wrestling with its loss of connection to the world and the loss of its humanity? We're at a really strange spot. And it got mentioned in Sean's list in terms of talking about the digital versus the analog, and that we're in this kind of very strange space. Was that in Sean's list, or was that our introductory conversation? I already forgot. I had it in my notes. Anyway, I'll cut that. There's America as an economy has led us to a very strange spot where we need to do real business about the most foundational questions to bring Plato back in. What does it look like to be a human being, a happy human being? Apparently, excess isn't the best path.
Yep.
The thing I love about Wall-E is the discovery of wonder in very, very, very small yet true things, and it showcases that.
And one thing I didn't mention is the reason. I mean, he is one of the reasons he is this Christ figure in a way. Is when Wall-E makes his way up to the Axiom, the spaceship, and he interacts not only with these malfunctioning robots and kind of inspires them to break out of their programming. He also, in running into these human beings who are floating around in their baby iPad chairs, it's what jars them out of their stupor, and they begin to see the world around them in ways that they haven't in years, perhaps, or to see one another for the first time ever, perhaps. And it's like that's what we're you're getting at it perfectly, Jeff. It's that's what we've lost, the ability to see one another, and it is killing us.
Let's go to the extreme, and then what ends up saving us at some level is curiosity about, and even rediscovering this is what I was made for, and it wasn't the artificial world. Finding our place in like the natural world is, I think Sean said it, I want to say last time, in terms of something to the effect that God made a garden and placed us in it. What did you say? It was a great line about the garden. Anyway, doesn't matter. Another thing I'll cut.
I can't remember. I say a lot of stuff.
All right, you want to recount our picks
choice.
Since we're kind of nearing closeout here.
Come on.
Okay, I want to say one thing before we do
Please.
our recap, because if you're still listening, the Lord bless you and keep you at this point. But I think we just need to do one round of an honorable mention that I think we can all agree on, which is not the story of America that we have lived up to until 2026 when we're recording this, but whether or not the story of America will be the stories that we covered or Idiocracy.
Right. That's another one that I was really tempted to put on the list.
It was on my short list as well.
I mean,
So
Rondo is
what's
what
the question?
plants crave.
I think we were all scared to be that honest.
like actually a prescient movie, like where there are literally WWF style fights, like hosted by the president who has been in a WWF cage. The lack of any sort of science for anything to solve, like, hey, have you thought about putting water on the plants? Like, oh, water goes in the toilet.
The world has become satire. Satire has become meaningless.
So it's one of my favorite comedians said recently, you can't actually satirize modern America, modern political America, right? Because it's so ridiculous you can't make fun of it. Like there's no way to take that to that next level or whatever. But I figured that Idiocracy was on a lot of our list, a lot of our listeners' list, and felt like if there was a universal honorable mention, that would be worth it.
So I guess we'll be taking the poll to YouTube here in a short order. So your 4 picks once again, Jeff Cook.
What I had Far and Away, Do the Right Thing, Wall Street, and The Right Stuff. I'm sticking with optimistic as opposed to cynical in my last pick.
My picks were Lincoln, Saving Private Ryan, Killers of the Flower Moon, and Malcolm X, all historical films, which I just have a bent toward.
And I went for vibes. So I've got 2025 Train Dreams. I've got 2012 Django Unchained, 1976 Network, and 2008 Wall-E.
It's a good list.
All right. So everybody gets to decide who wins. Clearly it's me. Because I actually, picked movies that were about things that happened in America. And no animation. But so this was super fun. Did you guys enjoy it? I don't know that anyone else will, but we did.
Hey, it was a blast. Happy Independence Day, everybody.